Good evening and welcome to a KPBS Envision special, How 9/11 Changed San Diego.
The attacks on the World Trade Center and the Pentagon happened thousands of miles away, but they had a deep impact right here. From the hundreds of San Diego-based troops lost in two wars sparked by the attacks to millions of federal dollars spent in this county, to stricter security measures that affect everyday San Diegans.
Tonight, we take a look at those changes and meet some of the people whose lives were forever changed by that day. The attacks hit home when we learned two of the hijackers had lived in San Diego. KPBS investigative reporter Amitha Sharma began reporting on their story 10 years ago. Amitha, tell me who these men were.
The two September 11th hijackers who lived in San Diego were Nawaf al-Hazmi and Khalid al-Midhar. They were in their 20s when they came here, and they came here in early 2000 and stayed for a good part of the year. They were described by people who knew them as simple desert men. They ate and slept on the floor. They were very religious. They rose early every morning to pray.
And why were they located in San Diego?
Because Khalid Sheikh Mohammed, who was one of the architects of 9/11, went to a flea market in Karachi, Pakistan, picked up a San Diego phone book, started looking through it, and he claims, based on him thumbing through that phone book, he decided to send these two Saudi men to San Diego.
Now, we know that the man who rented them a room was actually an informant for San Diego FBI. Did he not know that something was going on with these men?
This is very interesting, and this is the crux of the investigation into these two hijackers here in San Diego. The name of the informant was Abdul Sattar Sheikh, who was a retired Muslim professor. His sole job as an informant was to monitor the activities of Saudi students in San Diego to ascertain whether they intended any harm to the United States. What we know is that the FBI knew that he'd rented rooms to these students. Beyond that, we don't know anything else. However, the CIA at the time knew that Nawaf al-Hazmi and Khalid al-Midhar had attended a meeting of al-Qaeda operatives in Malaysia. And it was almost immediately after that meeting that they found their way to San Diego. The CIA knew that these two guys had attended the meeting. They also knew that they had entered the U.S. The FBI knew the two men had attended the meeting, but they did not know that they had entered the U.S., and the CIA did not communicate that to the FBI.
So this is really the lack of communication that we heard so much about in the months and in years that followed with regard to the 9/11 Commission. We also know that Sheriff Bill Gore was actually the head of San Diego FBI when this happened, and you have interviewed him. Does he have regrets about what he did or didn't know, what he did or didn't do at the time?
He has regrets that the information wasn't conveyed in a timely fashion. To your previous question, I said that that information was never conveyed. It wasn't conveyed until just months before the September 11th attacks in 2001. These two guys had already left San Diego. They left by the end of 2000. So his regret is that had the CIA conveyed that information to the FBI in a timely manner, they could have at least nabbed these guys if it was in 2000. Or even if after they left San Diego, the FBI had found out, they could have helped authorities track, first of all, retrace their steps in San Diego and then track these guys elsewhere in the United States. But he does, the various investigations into 9/11 have dinged the FBI in San Diego, saying that the fact that these guys lived with an FBI informant was a missed opportunity by the FBI in San Diego to have scrutinized these guys a little bit closer. Sheriff Gore says, well, why would we have scrutinized them? They were here legally. They didn't do anything to break the law. The only reason we would have scrutinized them is because they were Muslim.
So what's changed now in terms of the relationship with local FBI agents and the CIA?
What has changed is that there is a lot more sharing of intelligence now than there was 10 years ago. We now have 16 different intelligence agencies in this country, and they are sharing a lot more than they did 10 years ago.
Amitha, with the little bit of time we have left, I know that you have been reporting in this neighborhood where the hijackers live for several years now, and you've spoken with many of their neighbors, many people from that community. What do they say in terms of how their neighborhood has changed since 9/11?
Two women stand out. I did a story looking at how the relationship between the Muslim community and the community at large has changed over the past 10 years. Two women stand out. One is a woman who was born and raised as a Catholic in Claremont, and she was watching her grandchild at the very apartments, or they're now condos, where these two hijackers lived. She says that relationship has changed forever. A Muslim woman who, lived here for 30 years said before 9/11, even though she wore a headscarf, she was never looked at differently. After 9/11, she was harassed and she received harsh stares, and she doesn't think that things have improved too much.
KPBS reporter Amitha Sharma, thanks for being here.
Thank you.
Since 9/11, military deployments have become longer and more frequent. That is taking a significant toll on the lives of military families, trying to cope with long periods of separation. Geraldine Yoder knows all about military life.
I was in the Navy for just over 6 years. That's how my husband and I met, here in San Diego.
That was 11 years ago. She now calls Ramona in San Diego's East County home. Yoder remembers September 11th, 10 years ago, clearly. Pregnant with twins, her husband Nigel, a Navy officer, had deployed the day before.
I saw everything on the news, and the planes, crashing into the Twin Towers, and people in tears, and the firefighters, and the tickers just scrolling across the screen. I froze. With my background being Navy, immediately thought, well, this is going to change a lot of things, and I'm probably not really going to hear from my husband for quite some time. I got lots and lots of phone calls from my husband's siblings and his parents, very, very concerned for him and me being pregnant. And again, I had not heard anything from my husband, and I didn't know when I would hear from him.
Yoder eventually heard from him, but feared he wouldn't be home for the birth of their sons, Caleb and Aiden, who are now 9.
I ended up having my boys 6 weeks early, but he still made it home. He ended up being gone for a little over 2 months.
It's kind of like a miracle, too. I mean, you were early, and yet he was still able to make it home.
Yes, he was.
Wow. Yoder says before 9/11, the average Navy deployment was about 4 to 5 months. Today, it's 7 months or longer.
Because of 9/11, our military deployments, no matter what branch of service, are longer, and they're happening more frequent, meaning our sailors are coming home, and they may only be home for 2-3 months, and they turn right back around and they'll deploy again on that same ship or with the ground unit that they're attached to.
How does that relate to your family?
My husband has deployed lots. My boys are now 9. They just turned 9 this year. And my husband has deployed 5 times just since their birth, meaning most of their life he's been gone. He's been attached to a ship, a deployable command, their entire life. He's gone from ship to ship to ship. The needs of the Navy, because of 9/11, have changed dramatically.
You guys have been doing great since I've been gone. I'm very proud.
And so, too, has the life of military families like the Yoders. This is how the family stays in touch today. Nigel records a private video message onto a DVD and mails it to the boys and Geraldine.
I want you to know that even though I'm not there, I love you with all my heart. I think about you guys all the time, okay?
I don't have to worry about how long it takes for a letter or a card to get home. It's on DVD, so we can play it whenever they want and whenever they're missing their father their most.
She says the short in and out training cycles are the toughest on the family because you can't plan anything in advance. She also fears how the long separation between deployments will affect the boys.
They're getting to the age now where, they definitely need that male role model in their life, and they're becoming more active in sports and Boy Scouts, those types of things. So yes, as they continue to grow, it is my concern that the needs of our military will continue to be as demanding as they are now.
But Yoder remains hopeful. The family's military sacrifice will make us all safer.
As we always say, you know, my family bleeds blue and gold, Navy blue and gold. I know that especially, you know, with the capture of Osama bin Laden and the continued progress that our military continues to make, that things will get better.
Military families felt a huge impact from the 9/11 attacks and the war that followed. So did many others. We asked people in Oceanside about it. Our question, how has the course or direction of your life changed on 9/11?
I believe it is. We take a lot more precautions nowadays, especially with transportation security, and I think that's one of our biggest concerns. Although it still worries me with having the Mexican border unprotected.
I don't feel safer. I'm a little more worried that more terrorist attacks will happen.
I traveled 4 times out of the country last year, and I was always checked, and I feel a lot safer now.
Before 9/11, it was safer. After 9/11, you kind of feel different. It's like you're always on the lookout.
Now that Osama bin Laden has been caught, I doubt we'll have any problems with anything else.
For Muslims, the 9/11 attacks meant a spotlight on their faith and their community. And at times, that spotlight wasn't flattering. Some followers of Islam found themselves becoming the subject of suspicion and fear. Reporter Rebecca Romani tells us about a San Diego family's struggle to understand Islam in a very personal way.
The Arancibia family home sits on a small hillside in rural Bonita in southern San Diego County. The Arancibias are not your typical California Latino family. They're Chilean, not Mexican, and they're Christian, but not Catholic. What sets them apart even more is one son, 38-year-old Diego, a youth education coordinator who converted to Islam 13 years ago.
At a high school, I read 3 books, Rambo, First Blood, The Karate Kid, and then, of course, the autobiography of Malcolm X. But that was the one book that I didn't want to put down, and I said, I want to be like this individual. In the sense of someone who just completely transformed themselves and was able to make this huge impact on society.
A religions course on Islam in college resonated with him, but Diego says there was something deeper, more personal drawing him in, family history.
My father always really pushed. He would say, like, you know, we're Chilean. Your grandfather comes from Spain, and Spain was actually had the Moors there for 700 years. He put this in our consciousness. It's like our descendants come from this kind of great legacy and tradition.
In his last year of college, Diego said the Shahada, the declaration of faith in Islam.
Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen, Ar-Rahman Ar-Rahim. To declare it in front of people, it was totally life-changing.
According to Taha Hassan, Imam of the Islamic Center of San Diego, there is a growing trend of Latinos converting to Islam.
Most of them are young people, men and women, who were introduced to Islam by friends, by classmates, by neighbors. Latinos, based on my experience with them, are very religious people. Whenever they find something that might make more sense to them in terms of the worship system that exists in Islam, they get more attracted to become Muslims and more excited to embrace the Islamic faith.
Imam Hassan says around 55 people come to his center to convert every year, many of them Latino.
Basically, new converts face some challenges when they accept Islam. Accepting Islam for them is accepting another way of life that will affect their relationship with their friends, with their siblings and family members.
It is a shock. It was a shock for all of us.
40-year-old professor and poet Adrian Arancibia is Diego's older brother.
Diego and I are, as close as brothers as you can get. So that was really tough. And for me, it was tough not being able to go out with him.
Adrian says his family overcame their concerns by learning about Islam.
My family is really special in the sense that once we understood that he was going to be serious about, the conversion, I think it was really helpful. My mom, my father, they both picked up books and they started reading, And in that sense, we're a very loving and caring family because we try to understand the perspectives of everybody at the table.
The terrorist attacks of 9/11 had an impact on Diego and many Muslims in San Diego.
Initially, there was that kind of what's going on, should I leave my house, and then feeling that I have to apologize for something that didn't have to do, that had nothing to do with, right?
But Imam Hassan says 9/11 provided an opportunity for understanding as well.
9/11 was a wake-up call, but also it was a chance given to us as Muslims to do a better job in terms of reaching out to our non-Muslim neighbors. And I can tell you that 10 years after 9/11, the situation is totally different.
Today, both Diego and Adriana Arancibia are married with children. Diego says his culturally and religiously diverse family is a blessing.
And I thank God that my family have been so accommodating and understanding, because it was a growth process for all of us,
There are now 21 mosques and Islamic centers in San Diego County and in Tijuana.
To be truthful, before 9/11, I felt like any average American. I wake up every day and I felt part of society and whatnot. And I was made aware that I was not a full American or not an average or normal American right after September 11th. It's like I went to sleep an American and I woke up an Arab, even though I was born and raised in America.
Because I'm a firefighter, it was wrenching to witness and watch on television. I don't believe the course of my life has changed at all.
Deploying to Afghanistan and also the way that it's changed my life, so with that, like that, being taken away from my family and things like that.
There's friends personally that I lost, so I definitely took a more respect for the military.
I wasn't impacted directly by it. I didn't have any friends or anything, but economy impacted our lives. We lost our house and my husband lost his job after 20 years of working for the same company.
I got mad because I couldn't watch cartoons on TV. Every single channel was on New York.
It prompted me to go into the service and try to do more with my life to help others. It also helped family get together, honestly. It made us thankful for what we had.
Less than a month after the 9/11 attacks, President George W. Bush created the Office of Homeland Security to protect against future attacks. The department now has more than a $50 billion budget with 200,000 employees. KPBS reporter Allison St. John joins me now to talk about how much of that money is directed to San Diego and why. Allison, thanks for being here.
My pleasure.
First, can you begin by giving us an idea of the reach of the Department of Homeland Security in the county of San Diego?
Well, money is flowing in through many different channels to many different agencies, but as a region that is on the busiest border, international border, a lot of money is going to immigration and customs. There's money going to the Port District because we are on international waters. There's money going to the Metropolitan Transit District, North County Transit District, to make the trains safer. There's money going to the city and the county and our first responders. So there is money flowing in from many different, into many different agencies around the city.
Has anyone here been able to get a handle on how much money? Have they sort of totaled it all up?
Well, it's interesting. I did try to get a total. There is one source put out by the census, the Consolidated Federal Funds, that suggested we got $500 million, $500 million, just in 2009. However, I was unable to get confirmation of that from the Department of Homeland Security, and it sounds like that may even be an underestimation. However, it is easier to get a sense of what some of the different agencies have gotten. The Port District says since 9/11 they've had $32 million, and they've been able to beef up security, cybersecurity around the Bay. The city and the county say that they get $16 million every year in what's called Urban Area Security Initiative money, or URC money. So that's just an example of the millions, really, that are pouring into the region from Homeland Security.
Do we know, Allison, what these various departments or agencies are spending their money on?
Absolutely. Well, a lot of the money for the Urban Area Security Initiative is going on communications, interoperable communications, which is key. And so they've spent about $100 million on getting radios so that different agencies can actually talk to each other during an emergency, which is kind of useful. They've also spent, I believe, $250 million on a regional threat assessment center Then there is the County Operations Center that had about $1 million spent on it. So most of it is, and then 10% of it every year is spent on training. So most of it is really to do with coordination. It's like supplementing local law enforcement and first responder money to make us work together more effectively in an emergency.
You went to one of these training exercises, didn't you?
Yes, it was actually quite interesting. There was apparently about 200 first responders in San Diego have been trained with this. And it was a simulation exercise to bring people who are already pretty experienced in dealing with emergencies like fire, police, FBI, together using these radios with 4 different channels. They also had telephones, and they were juggling all of these different sources of communication and working with each other for the first time to really simulate a crisis situation that would be similar to one that we could have in this region.
Now, you began, Allison, by describing our geography. We're at a border, an ocean. We're surrounded by all of this. Does that make us unique compared to the rest of the country?
Well, according to the Department of Homeland Security, San Diego has been named a Tier 1 city in terms of the risk. And there are only 11 cities in the nation categorized as Tier 1. So San Diego is up there in terms of risk as far as Homeland Security is concerned.
So being a Tier 1, as somebody who lives in this county, should that put us at ease from the point of view that, oh, there's this money flowing and we're prepared? Or should we be worried that we're a target?
Well, I think that's a good question, Joanne. I think, San Diego is more than just a beautiful sunny city on the ocean where a lot of tourists enjoy coming on vacation. It is also one of the largest military industrial complexes in the country, and it is on the border, and it has now a large presence of the Navy. Is moving to the 60% of Navy resources are moving to the West Coast, and San Diego is one of the major bases. So it is definitely a strategic region for the nation, and as a result we are receiving more resources. And I think that the interesting thing was that after Katrina, the federal government decided that Homeland Security money could be used not just for terrorism threats, but also for natural disasters. And let's face it, we know that earthquakes and fires, just look at the news around the country this week. Natural disasters are something that is very real, terrorist attack or not. And we do have a lot more resources now to deal with those kinds of disasters.
So finally, Allison, then, are we safer in the event of attack, or are we safer in the event of natural disaster?
Everyone I have spoken to has said yes, unqualified yes. The San Diego region is much safer since 9/11. Millions have been invested in things that we do not see behind the scenes. Critical infrastructure is being protected, and the training of all the first responders has really improved. So to that extent, San Diego has benefited, even if it is a natural disaster that we use these resources for, from Homeland Security money.
Allison St. John, thanks for being here.
My pleasure.
The deepest impact of the 9/11 attacks is measured in the lives lost in the attacks themselves and in the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan.
San Diego's military bases lost many men and women from all over the country. Tonight, we salute those who grew up here in this county and left to serve.
We leave you with the roll call of their names, accompanied by the San Diego Firefighters Emerald Society Pipe and Drum Band.